Hi friends, welcome to Biju Gayu's Teaching Cafe. Friends, I hope you are doing very well. I hope you are happy. This is a small video lecture about modern approach. We have been discussing approaches to politics for the last couple of days through this video lectures. We have discussed traditional approach and different types of traditional approach. This lecture is another dimension of approaches to politics. The title, as I told you a while ago, the modern approach. You know, there are two dominant paradigms of studying politics. There are two dominant methods of looking at politics. One is the classical way of looking at politics. The other one is modern or contemporary way of looking at political phenomenon. What is the classical way of looking? As we have seen in the previous lectures about traditional approaches, the classical way of seeing politics, the classical way of observing political behavior, the classical way of interpreting political phenomenon is normative. I think we have discussed what is meant by normative, ideal, philosophical, and prescriptive. And in a sense, the classical way of seeing politics doesn't go into the field where the actual problems are happening to collect empirical data by which you can propose valid and reliable theories about our social world. Classical way of seeing never goes to the field and meet people and collect their opinion in a systematic way. Rather, it is a type of seeing political behavior by using intuitive power, reasoning, logical reasoning. So modern approach is different. Unlike the classical approach, modern approach of viewing or seeing politics is more empirical, it is more practical, and certainly it goes to the field where the actual problem takes place and collect so many data to propose solid, reliable, and authentic theories about our social world or about our political world. So, greater the data, greater the reliability of your theories. That is what modern approaches believe. So it needs more data about the phenomenon under study or about the phenomenon you are going to study. So you have to think why the modern approach goes to the field and collect empirical data unlike the traditional approaches to politics. Friends, there is certainly a reason. There was a growing dissatisfaction among the practitioners of political theory or political science in the academic world, particularly in the American part of the world, that traditional approaches were more unrealistic, that was more utopian. Why they think so? That is an interesting question. Why the Americans, political scientists, began to think that classical way of seeing politics is more unrealistic. Why? I can tell you a small story in order to understand why the modern approach to politics emerged, why the practitioners of political science in the academic world were largely dissatisfied with the techniques of classical approach in seeing and viewing political phenomena. So friends, on 11 October 1939, Alexander Sachs, he was a Wall Street economist and longtime friend and unofficial advisor to the then American President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The same day, that is 11 October 1939, he met with the president to discuss a letter written by none other than the famous, renowned physicist Albert Einstein. And Einstein wrote a letter to the American president on 2nd August 1939. So the renowned German-born theoretical physicist Albert Einstein wrote this letter in view of an impending danger that is going to haunt the whole humanity. Letter was a small one with a few lines, but powerful enough to convince an American president to take a decision that would change the course of human history in the future. So a letter was drafted. Einstein drafted this letter with the help of the Hungarian emigre physicist. Emigre means someone who has emigrated to another place or country. Emigre physicist Leo Szilard. Leo Szilard. Leo Szilard was one of a number of European scientists who had fled to the United States in the 1930s to escape the Nazi and fascist repression and tortures. Szilard was among the most vocal of those advocating a program to develop bombs based on recent findings in nuclear physics and chemistry those days. So Einstein had written to inform Roosevelt that recent research in Germany on fission chain reactions utilizing uranium made it possible that large amounts of power could be produced. Large amounts of power could be produced by a chain reaction, and that by harnessing this power, the construction of extremely powerful bombs were conceivable. So Einstein predicted that bombs that can produce extremely lethal power is possible in the future, and researches are going on in Europe. And Einstein believed the German government under Hitler, he established a Nazi government in Germany, was actively supporting this type of research in Germany in this area. Therefore, Einstein urged the United States government to do like that. And as I told you, Alexander Sachs, the Wall Street economist and the longtime friend of Franklin D. Roosevelt, read the cover letter he had prepared and briefed Roosevelt on the main points contained in Einstein's letter. Initially, the president was non-committal and expressed concern over locating the necessary funds. He was a little bit, unmindful of the letter written by Einstein. But at a second meeting, over a breakfast the next morning, Roosevelt became convinced of the value of exploring atomic energy. But you see, Roosevelt took 2 months to take a decision. Einstein wrote the letter on 2nd August 1939, but Roosevelt took a decision to push American government to conduct nuclear research on only October 1939. That August, September, October took almost 2 months. So Roosevelt wrote Einstein a letter back on October 19, 1939, informing the physicist that he had set up a committee consisting of civilian and military representatives to study about uranium. Events proved that the president was a man of considerable action once he had chosen a direction. Friends, the rest is history. Nuclear programs started in USA on 21 October 1939. First nuclear weapon was tested on 16 July 1945. US took 6 months to finish the bomb. First test. On August 6, 1945, United States dropped its first atomic bomb on Japan on innocent civilians. From a B-29 bomber plane called Enola Gay over the city of Hiroshima, Japan, the little boy, that was the bomb called, exploded with about 13 kilotons of force, leveling 5 square miles of the city and killing 80,000 people instantly. Friends, you see, nobody predicted, nobody anticipated, no commentators, no opinion makers, no scholars, no academics anticipated that a democracy will develop a bomb and drop it on innocent civilians. So everybody predicted, but on the other side, everybody predicted that a totalitarian government, an autocratic government like Nazi or fascist Italy will develop a bomb and will drop, never mind to drop bomb on innocent civilians. But what happened? You see, democracy dropped bombs on, that is atomic bombs on innocent civilians. That means even democracy proved how nasty the political system is. This is the problem with the political science. What is the problem? It failed to predict many events that changed the course of human history. It failed to predict events. It failed to anticipate that something will happen in the future. It failed to study human behavior, the behavior of political leaders, the behavior of governments. It failed to evaluate and assess the outcome of government decisions. It failed to predict wars, civilian unrest, mass killings, terror of ideologies, and so on. For example, World War First killed 37 million people. World War II killed people between 50 to 80 million. Between 1933 and 1945, the Nazi rule in Germany killed almost 6 million Jews. That was called Holocaust. Mao era between 1949 and 1976 in China reportedly killed innocent people between 40 to 80 million. Millions of people died due to Great Depression in the 1930s. Stalin in Russia, Soviet Union, killed 20 million people between 1927 and 1953. You see, the United States of America has 6,800 nuclear warheads. That of Russia is 7,850, which alone comprises 90% of all the nuclear warheads in the world. Why? These two countries alone possess 90% of total nuclear warheads in the world. 3 billion people live with less than $2.5 a day. 192 million people are unemployed in the world. Friends, there are so many problems. There are so many tragedies, so many mass unrest. But no political science is able to anticipate any of these problems, nor able to bring an agreeable solution to any of these problems. So political scientists by the 1950s, world over, particularly in the United States, nearly started to think that traditional or classical way of seeing and viewing political phenomena is outdated, futile, which yield no result. A new movement started, which was ushered in by a group of political scientists in the United States who were not satisfied with the way in which political science studied political phenomenon. They were not happy with the way in which a political scientist analyzed and evaluated government and the state and its relationship with citizens. They felt that tremendous explorations had occurred in other social sciences like sociology, psychology, anthropology, which when applied to political science will give new insight to political scientists, they believed. So they now started collecting data related to actual political happenings. They began to collect data from the field. They began to study human behavior, behavior of leaders, statistical information coupled with the actual behavior of man. They believed it will help political scientists in arriving at definite conclusions and definite observations and predict behavior of people, predict political phenomena in the future. So the quantitative and statistical methods, the system approach, simulation approach were developed in political science by the 1950s. So political scientists believe political science will bring a new insight into the way in which political scientists will look at political phenomena. So let us see what are the main points or features of modern approach being developed by political scientists in the United States by 1950s. So certainly modern approach begins by the evolution of behavioral movement in political science. The main characteristics of behavioral movement or behavioral revolution can be summed up as that it rejects political institutions as the basic unit of political research. Modern approach identifies the behavior of individual in political situation as the basic unit of analysis. That is, you should study human behavior. You should apply techniques of psychology, techniques of sociology to study how humans behave in a particular situation. It tries to identify social science as behavioral science and emphasizes the unity of political science with other social sciences. That is, they tried to integrate political science with other social sciences, say history, economics, sociology, anthropology, psychology. So it advocated the utilization and development of more precise techniques of observation, of classifying data, of measuring data, and it called for the use of statistical tools, quantitative formulas to analyze people's behavior in political situations. So it defines the construction of systematic empirical theory as the goal of a political scientist. So political scientists after World War II demanded that there should be more fact-based research in political science. So political scientists should study facts about political phenomena. More rigorous scientific and definite conclusions are required in political science, they observed. So the best way is to avoid traditional way of looking at political phenomenon. More database research is required, more facts are required. It demanded the study of politics be more interdisciplinary, as I told you a while ago. It should be more survey based, it should be scientific and systematic, it should be more practical, unlike the traditional approach that anticipates about human behavior by using intuitive power. But modern approach never use intuitive power. Rather, they collect data about practical situations, about human behavior, and proposes theory by using the data collected. They collect so many data and proposes theories about human actions. So there are different types of modern approach. For example, modern approach have developed sociological methods, economic approach, psychological approach, quantitative techniques, simulation approach, system approach, behavioral and post-behavioral approach, Marxian approach to study politics. There are so many techniques in the modern approach. So we will discuss only behavioral and systems approach in the next video lecture. Before going to other lectures, let us wind up this lecture by looking at how exactly a political scientist can apply modern approach to situations, social situations. Let us understand the practical side of this approach. You see, one of your classmates is saying that particular professor, one of your professors is not a good professor. That was the comment of one of your classmates. Friends, if you are looking this comment of classmate from a classical way of seeing, viewing and interpreting things, you are okay with this comment because that person has all the right, natural right to make opinion and comments about other person, and that person is just because human beings are trustable, worthy. They are by nature good according to classical way of seeing things. So you conclude that that person is what that your classmate said about the other person or the professor is right. In classical way of looking at political and social phenomenon, human nature is very important, right? Human nature is very important when you look at political phenomena from a classical way of seeing and viewing. But in modern approach, it will not work. Why? Because in modern approach, there is low opinion about human nature. That this tradition, that is, human nature cannot be trusted. Humans cannot be trusted was started in a way started by Niccolo Machiavelli, the Italian political philosopher. Indeed, Niccolo Machiavelli is said to be the father of modern political scientist, and he was the first exponent of modern approach in political science. He believed that man is inward looking. You should not trust man. Man is deceiving. His behavior cannot be predicted. So he is untrustworthy. That is what Machiavelli said about human nature. So he advised rulers not to trust your citizen. So therefore, if you make observation about human nature, you need data. So according to modern approach, if you are a good student of political science, you will never depend the comment of your classmate about the professor. Because the comment of your classmate is very personal. Maybe that student will have some kind of personal issue with that professor. That might have motivated this particular student to make a low opinion about the professor. In order to make a good opinion, in order to make a comment about the professor, to make general conclusions or general observations about the professor, you need to collect as many data as possible. So you have to take responses of a definite number of students from different batches where the professor has delivered lectures. So that way you have to collect data about the behavior of this professor from different batches who had studied in a particular institution where the professor had contacted them, the students had contacted the professor, and collect data or opinion about the students, opinion of the students about the professor over a particular period of time, and you have to make propositions. That will be more reliable instead of depending upon one comment by one person about another person. So fact is very important. That way you have to collect data for all the phenomena in the social world to make observations, to make conclusions. Such conclusions will be more reliable, more authentic, more accurate. So friends, I am winding up this lecture with the idea that in modern approach, what you need is data from the field, and your theories, your conclusions, observations should be more practical. For that you need to develop some techniques to collect data from the field. So friends, there are different types of approach. We will discuss these different types of approaches in the next lecture, video lecture. Thank you. If you have any comments, doubts, clarifications, please drop a line to this video YouTube comment section. Thank you.